So it looks like we are going to be on the play here. And I'm going to keep this hand. Got 2 discard spells plus Nahiri. So I'm just going to go ahead and lead off here on Inquisition of Kozilek. And it looks like we are actually up against Suicide Zoo, Death Shadow, Aggro. Our opponent's got 1 land in hand, that's it, noticeably. So the Steplix and the Wild Nikado cannot be cast here. Monastery Swiftspear, on the other hand, can be cast immediately. We know that. The Street Wraith is away. Our opponent can cycle cards. The Mishra's Bauble. The Mishra's Bauble is somewhat scary in this hand. Kind of leaning towards taking the Bauble here. Alright, let's gamble. Let's take the Mishra's Bauble. We're kind of hoping to mana screw our opponent a little bit. I expect our opponent to cycle the Street Wraith here. We'll see if our opponent is able to find a land that can cast Steplinks or Wild Nikado. If not, I think we're in good shape because we know our opponent's sitting on just Blood Crypt here. So yes, it does look like our opponent is cycling the Street Wraith here. Expect to see the Monastery Swiftspear at least come down, but it does look like our opponent has found a land. So instead, it looks like Steplinks is going to be the play. And our opponent's now at 15. So we're going to go ahead and Thoughtseize here. And we get a better look at what our opponent's working with. A Bolt, a Swiftspear, and a Nikado. Our opponent still cannot cast that Nikado. But we do see Death Shadow, and we're just going to take the Death Shadow, I think. It's just the scariest card in our opponent's hand. The namesake card of the deck. So might as well get that out. Get that out of there. So we don't have to worry about it. And our opponent got a little bit lucky to draw this Arid Mesa here. So this is going to enable our opponent to actually just dump their entire hand into play, or all of their creatures, I should say, into play. And we're going to be taking 5 damage here. So, yeah, the fetch land was pretty good. So the plan is now to cast Lingering Souls. And we're going to get the basic planes out of our deck in order to do it. But not loving our spot. So it looks like our opponent's drawn another fetch. So we know about that our opponent has lightning bolts in hand. And this is a pretty significant attack here. So we've got a couple options. We're kind of locked into chump blocking here. I think we just chump off. It doesn't look great, but we're gonna try to protect our life total. Now we can get Nahiri down. And we're just going to get rid of the Steplinks. So we know our opponent has a Bolt in hand. If our opponent draws another pump spell, we're dead. It looks like the draw step was Steplinks. So we'll see if our opponent probably is going to get rid of our Nahiri. That would be the best play here, I think. A card we would really want to draw here, Anger the Gods. Would be our best draw. So we did not draw Anger. What we did draw is Wall of Omen. So I actually like just going ahead and playing that. And we have this Lingering Souls in the graveyard we can flash back. And we actually did draw the Anger. We would have much rather have drawn it for our turn, but we'll settle with this. So yeah, there's the Blood Crypt coming down, and we're just going to be blocking all of our opponent's creatures here. And this way, we can potentially get around a Lightning Bolt if our opponent does top deck one. We are going to cast the Anger here, and our opponent is not going to be able to save any of their creatures unless they have drawn a pump spell. So, yep, that's going to work. So, we're at 4 life here. But, just going to slam down this Nahiri and tick it up. Discarding Lingering Souls. And we've all of a sudden just kind of turned the corner here in a big, big way. And that's going to be game 1. So, yeah, I mean, the Anger of the Gods was pretty fortunate, of course. But, yeah, was able to dodge that one. So, moving to the sideboard, we want this Go for the Throat. I think we want to board in the 3rd Anger. We saw how good that card can be. Crucible of Worlds, it's just a little bit too slow. It does do some things once we reach the late game, but we're just kind of trying to disrupt what our opponent is up to here. Thoughtseize is fine. It can take cards like Become Immense, which are very good against us. I think we can probably shave 1 copy of Lingering Souls. Yeah, this seems okay. Let's try it. Didn't do too much after board. We have a lot of removal in our deck, some discard. So I wouldn't say this is per se a bad matchup, but it's close. So we're going to keep this. We have double Lightning Bolt, so we have removal for early plays like Nikado, like Swift Spear, like Step Links. So it looks like Swift Spear is the one our opponent's going to start with. Now, even though we have this Bolt, we have to be aware that our opponent could have mutagenic growth. Even so, we still want to fire it off, though. And we're just going to hope our opponent doesn't have it. If they do, we're still just trading Lightning Bolt for mutagenic growth. The second Anger of the Gods is a lot worse than the first one, so we're not really that happy about picking that card up here. We would much rather just have our 3rd land so we know we can cast our spells. Here's a Probe, so our opponent's now going to know about these Anger of the Gods. But we're just kind of hoping to draw lands. If we can get to Nahiri, we'll be looking good. So, yep, this is going to bring us down to 14 here. And our play is going to be, once again, just trying to get our opponent's creatures off the board. Lightning Bolt is hopefully going to be able to do that. If our opponent has a mutagenic growth, that would be the card that would be able to save this Swift Spear. But it looks like our opponent might be working towards a Death Shadow, as we see a fetch and then a shock. So we've got double Terminate in hand. Terminate is a reasonable answer to Death Shadow. And our opponent's going to now see that we have double Terminate. But it doesn't matter. The Death Shadow, the Suicide Zoo deck is pretty much forced to just go all in and hope it's going to be good enough. So We see a lot of life loss here for the turn, and I wouldn't be surprised to see something like a Death Shadow. But it looks like our opponent's just going to pass. And not a bad draw step here, the Blood Crypt. No reason to play it untapped, so we're just going to play it tapped here. And Blackcleave Cliffs, definitely not the best land in our deck, but it is a land that, and having a land here is pretty nice. The Anger of the Gods, we're going to be pretty happy to start discarding them to Nahiri and just playing Nahiri ASAP. The instant speed removal, the Terminates, are a lot better than sorcery speed removal. Our opponent can have something like a Swift Spear to just kill us out of nowhere. So we really have to be worried about that type of situation coming up. At the same time, we can't just pass back and wait forever. So next turn, we probably are going to cast the Nahiri. Alright, so it looks like our opponent is going to fetch here. We'll see if this means a play incoming or not. Oh, wow. Ranger of Eos. That's actually really good here. So our opponent is going to search for Swift Spear and Death Shadow. And our draw step here is going to be a copy of Lightning Bolt. Well, we can't play Nahiri now because we're worried about dying to the Swift Spear. So I don't think we can just jam Nahiri. So I'm going to go ahead and try to bolt away the Ranger. And simply pass back. Alright, here's Death Shadow. And another Death Shadow. Our opponent's playing these out relatively confidently, which is not great news. So the draw here is Ghost Quarter. So we're just going to pass the turn to our opponent. And hope we don't die this turn. I actually think we want to wait for our opponent to make a move here. And so, let's see, we're worried about Become Immense and Temur Battle Rage. I guess there's really, if our opponent has it, we really can't legitimately win the game, so we probably just want to terminate the Death Shadow either way. Alright, so if our opponent just has the Battle Rage and the Become Immense, then that is going to be the game. Alright, there's Mutagenic Growth. And it looks like double Mutagenic Growth, so yep, that's going to do it here as well. So let's go on to the game 3 here. And yeah, I think we can on the play we don't need the Anger of the Gods as much. So we don't need to do too much still. Our discard's still good. We want to know what is in our opponent's hand and then use our removal as efficiently as possible. And we're going to keep this hand Um, so yeah, just going to go ahead and start off here with Inquisition. So we see our opponent's hand. Probe and Bobble are basically the cantrips in this hand. The more worrisome cards are the Lynx, the Swift Spear, and the Nakatl. I think we just take the Swift Spear and pass the turn. Swift Spear, it's just going to deal us the most damage over the course of the game. And here's the step links. So we know about Nakatl. Our opponent, as far as we know, does not yet have the green source to cast it. So we're just going to play Bloodstained Mire and pass here. And we'll see if our opponent did draw a fetch land. So that's going to mean the Lynx is going to be a 4-point hit. The Probe is going to allow our opponent to see exactly what we're working with. And I'm expecting to just take 4 here. I'd be pretty surprised if our opponent were to try to do anything more than that. Alright, so yep, just going to go down to 14. And here's the Nakatl and a Mishra's Bauble. So if we draw a red source, we are going to be able to cast this Anger of the Gods. If not, we're going to have to decide what's going to make the most sense. And we are down to 13, so this is a pretty big sweat here. We'll see if we get there with the red source. And we did. So now we're hoping our opponent doesn't have a mutagenic growth to save either of these creatures. And it looks like our opponent does not. So that's going to work out in our favor in a big way. Although here's a Swift Spear. But luckily our opponent couldn't do anything more than just deal us 1 with that Swift Spear. So I'm just going to go ahead and put down Nahiri, or at least attempt to. And we can go ahead and discard our Lingering Souls here and just work up with Nahiri. And it looks like that's going to be the match.